Good evening and welcome to the Children's Defense Fund New York's Whole Child, Whole Community Fiscal Year 2024 Budget Priorities Teach-In. Tonight, you will hear from amazing young people, community leaders, advocates, and elected officials on what marginalized children, youth, young adult families, and their communities need in our New York State fiscal year 2024 budget in order to address systemic racism in our various systems, in order to reduce and end child poverty in our state, in order to ensure economic stability, and enable our children, young people, families, and communities have what they need to thrive and have joy and access to true opportunities. Teaching topics include the Working Families Tax Credit, childhood lead poisoning, youth mental health care, the Child and Family Wellbeing Fund, Raise the Age, Close to Home, and the Whole Child's Whole Community Holistic Budget. Please monitor the chat for ways you can take action now and during the entire week for our Whole Child, Whole Community Fiscal Year 2024 Week of Action. I will now turn it over to a true legislative champion for working families, Senator Genardis, to discuss the need for a Working Families Tax Credit in New York.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for having me join you. I'm State Senator Andrew Genardis, and I am the chairman of the Committee on Budget and Revenue. But more importantly, I am the author of the proposed New York State Working Families Tax Credit. What we're trying to do with the Working Families Tax Credit is replicate the incredible success that we saw during the pandemic through the American Rescue Plan of the expanded federal child tax credit. For a period of 6 months in this country, we cut the poverty rate for children in half because we nearly doubled the size of the child tax credit, and we paid it out on a monthly basis so that working families wouldn't have to wait until tax time to get money back in their pocket, and they could put that money to use for them right away to buy things like school supplies, food for their, food for dinner, pay off a utility bill, take a trip to the aquarium, do something as a family, all the things that families really need and that deserve to be able to live really strong and vibrant lives in our communities. The federal child tax credit let us do that. And then it expired. And now we're back to square one. So the Working Families Tax Credit looks to replicate that success and increase the state child tax credit program to $1,500 per child, eliminate the gap that right now in New York State prohibits children ages 0 to 4 from qualifying for the state child tax credit, as well as children of parents who are here on work visas and ITIN families, and give every family a minimum of $1,500 per child. We estimate that over the course, the average family through the Working Families Tax Credit will see more than $1,000 come back to them every single year in cash that they can use to pay for their necessities. This is a game changer for families from Brooklyn to Buffalo and everywhere in between. And the best thing about this is that we are going to pay out tax credit 4 times a year. So every 3 months, you would get a check or you'd get money back in your account to be able to buy your necessities. So we are really making a big push in this year's budget. New York has one of the highest rates of childhood poverty anywhere in the United States. And by law, we have to come up with a strategy to cut our poverty rate in half by the end of this decade. The Working Families Tax Credit will reduce child poverty by more than 20%, which means it is a proven tool that we can use to help us meet our goals, to help give every single kid in this state a fighting chance at a great life. I'm really excited about this. I'm excited about the coalition that we have built in every corner of the state to support this. And I'm excited about the impact that this could have on families in each and every one of our communities. I urge you, if you are interested to get more information, let us know. We'd love to get you more involved in this campaign. Thank you to the Children's Defense Fund for supporting us, for being part of this coalition, for being out there fighting for what we know that families need. And I'm just so grateful to spend some time with you all this evening. So thank you. And now I'm going to pass it over to one of our fierce parent advocates, Amy Tsai. Amy?
Thank you, Senator Genardis. I am really honored to be in this space. Again, my name is Amy Tsai. I am first and foremost a parent of the Bronx. I have 5 New York City students, I am an activist, I'm an advocate, and I'm a community leader. And I am also an elected parent member of our education council in New York City. So I am really in a mindset for our working families tax credit, how important it is to my family. As you know, I had 3 of my 5 children with special needs. So essentially, a rainy day is so important, knowing that what I could supply for them can be so beneficial and essential. Um, I've gone through a journey where childcare was at a height that I had to make sure that, all of my kids were taken care of while I was able to provide for my children. Food and a rent. We know New York City rent is very high. So we really want to make sure that, our children are safe and that they have a place to go. Representing community here in the Northwest Bronx, a lot of our families have dealt with, having to scrap whatever they come with their paycheck to paycheck every month to make sure that they have the essentials to go home with and to provide that for their child. So as representing my community and living in my community, I want to support my neighbors, knowing that this can be that rainy day. It could be paying a month for rent that you're behind, your utilities, your childcare, babysitter, making sure that you get transportation to work or get your kids to school. Those are very essential things that we need to make sure that our communities are here to help. For myself and my family, I have, grown teenagers now who are looking forward to college, and what that may mean is financial support. And so looking for the expectation of, a few money from my taxes that I pay can really come back to me and support them either on campus, by school supplies, by necessary dorm supplies, or just even classes that they want to supplement for certain majors that they want to accomplish. And so I really look forward that this sponsor that Senator Granados is sponsoring is really a reflective of how our working families, our immigrant families, our temporary housing families, and all of our neighbors really get an opportunity to see that their taxpaying money is in good use. And so thank you so much for this space, for our youth voice, our parent voice, and our community voice to make sure that there's equity across New York State and New York City as well. So thank you so much, and I will pass it off to our partners.
Thank you so much, Amy, for your fierce advocacy. And thank you to Senator Gunardes for championing the working families tax credit. Here at CDF New York, we believe very strongly that it is a moral failure to allow children to live in poverty in one of the richest states in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And so right now we are urging everyone who's tuning into our teach-in to take action with the link in the chat, to contact your legislators and urge them to end child poverty, promote racial equity, and move marginalized families towards economic security by expanding and strengthening the Empire State Child Credit and Earned Income Tax Credit, and by creating a strong, streamlined working families tax credit. And thank you so much for taking action on this. And right now it is my pleasure to pass it along to Chanel Cunningham, a senior at the Thurgood Marshall Academy for Learning and Social Change in Harlem. Chanel?
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chanel Cunningham, and I'm a senior in high school at the Thurgood Marshall Academy for Learning and Social Change. It is such a pleasure and a great honor to be here sharing my voice in giving this speech pertaining to how I feel about youth mental health. Even prior to COVID-19 and the traumas it has inflicted upon our children, youth, and young people, mental health is one of the most concerning and prevalent topics among youth. Mental health is a way of describing psychological, social, and emotional well-being. Good mental health is necessary to develop well, build strong relationships, adapt to change, and deal with life's challenges. As teenagers go through stages of puberty, they may become emotionally confused about different events. Teenagers experience the stress of gaining or maintaining a new job, the increase of schoolwork, and misunderstanding parents. As these ups and downs in life occur, some seem to mentally last longer than others. This can be where youth go through depression, self-harm, or commit suicide. So mental health among youth is an everyday issue. Addressing the issue of mental health requires extensive ongoing contact with the person that is suffering. In today's technological advanced society, the internet is more accessible than it has ever been before. This has resulted in the majority of our youth communication taking place online through various social networking platforms, which is why I believe in order to effectively contact the younger generations, it must be done through the internet, seeing that the younger generation is always online. Youth voices must be at the center of decision-making processes for their own health, well-being, their empowerment and resilience, their education and skills, and their connection with people. The impact of existing mental health issues can be reduced through the early provision of appropriate services, and these groups and/or forums should be readily available for the youth when they might need them. These may include improving community capacity to deal with mental health problems in young people through the provision of information, first aid training, and self-care initiatives, primary care services provided by general practitioners and other frontline service providers such as school counselors, community healthcare workers, and/or non-government agency youth workers. Showing love and support can be a positive influence on youth mental health. So let's better our relationships with the youth in society and make a positive change. Thank you all for having me today.
Next up, we have Shaynell Getty. So it seems that Shaynell may just have a little technical issues. So she'll be right back. I will jump in here. My name is Carlos Nichols. I'm the Youth Leadership and Advocacy Associate here at the Children's Defense Fund, New York. And as Shaynell is coming back in, just wanted to once again reiterate that in the 3 years since New York City became the epidemic for the COVID-19 pandemic, there have been an exacerbated amount of needs for marginalized children, for youth, for families, and in our communities. And it is important that right now, while we are in the midst of a youth mental health crisis, that we take action to increase services and wellness supports in our school, and that also across the state, that the budget reflects the importance of the need for our students to be able to have these services. So as young people are grappling with these impacts in school, outside of school, with their families, inside of their communities, it is important that there is an expansion of mental health supports, and that also that this expansion includes tangible and specific investments in the mental health services and supports for our young people. So let's take action. Let's do what's necessary to make sure that our young people feel supported and that they have what's necessary when they need it. And I believe Chanel is back. I'll pass it off to her. I'll pass it on to Christina.
Thank you so much, Carlos. And so next up, we're going to have some amazing parent advocates talk to us about New York's childhood lead poisoning crisis.
Hey everyone, I'm not going to be able to be on camera tonight due to technical issues, but hey again, my name is Enijah Ruffin, community organizer at Citizen Action of New York. I'm a mother of 6 beautiful children. My daughter, who was 3 years old at the time, was exposed to lead in my apartment back in 2019. Her lead levels reached 19 by the time the doctor realized she had been exposed. I have had to worry about the possible effects on her cognitive development, her development as a whole, because we all know that children who have been exposed to lead, a neurotoxin, are at high risk for lower IQs, delays in growth and speech, learning disabilities, organ failure, and even death. The emotional toll is great, but it doesn't stop there. Students who struggle to learn in school and experience behavioral problems may not earn high school diplomas or find gainful employment. Lead exposure at a young age can ruin our children's lives before they can even truly begin. It is vitally important that our New York State elected officials pass legislation that adhere to the needs of our marginalized communities, families, and youth. Thank you guys for having me across the state. Bye-bye.
Good evening. My name is Oceana Fair, and I too am a parent who has been affected by childhood lead poisoning. I am part of a grassroots organization called Families for Lead Freedom Now. We are a group of families who have been directly affected by the lead poisoning crisis here in Syracuse, New York. Let me briefly give you my story. My story began with lead poisoning 41 years ago, when my brother, at the young age of 2, was poisoned in a home that my parents were renting at the time. At 2 years old, his entire future was decided for him. Now at the age of 43, he is the mind of an 8-year-old and counts on my siblings and I for his daily care. This is because he has now outlived both of our parents. Fast forward some 40 years later, and my granddaughter became poisoned in my own home. My granddaughter now counts on help in school just so that she can participate and keep up with her peers. She has to take medications for ADHD daily just so she can concentrate on her schoolwork. You may think that childhood lead poisoning being generational is a 1 in a million chance. Unfortunately, here in Syracuse, we hear those stories often. We hear about grandmothers who were lead poisoned, who then went on to raise children who were lead poisoned, and now have grandchildren who are lead poisoned. And you may think, again, this is just a fluke for Syracuse. But unfortunately, due to the systemic racism that shaped our communities way back when redlining and other governmental procedures were put into place, our communities are now by design. In Syracuse, our Black and brown children are poisoned at a rate of 10 to 1 to their Caucasian counterparts. If you are a Black male child living in my neighborhood, you have a 1 in 4 chance of being lead poisoned in your own home. As Enijah said earlier, this affects a child's ability to learn, lowers their IQ points, makes completing high school graduation almost impossible. What we need from our New York leaders now is to stand up. Childhood lead poisoning is a completely preventable illness. There is no reason for any child to be lead poisoned ever. We need to strengthen the laws, to protect our children. We need to put the money behind the laws that get remediation for our children. And then we also need to put funding into making sure that our children and our families have the supports that they need. Thank you. And now I'll pass it on to Missy Gennardi.
Thank you so much, Oceana. And thank you, Anisha, for both sharing your personal experiences and stories that are very moving words and that really illustrate the urgency and necessity of our state making bold, decisive investments to end childhood lead exposure and poisoning in New York. We urge you all to take action using the link in the chat to urge your elected officials to make bold, necessary investments to combat and end childhood lead exposure and poisoning in the state budget. And you will also see in the action alert a link to join the Lead Free Kids New York Coalition, which CDF New York co-founded and co-leads. We would love to have you all join us as part of Lead Free Kids New York. And now it's my pleasure to pass it along to Justin Mercado, a fierce advocate and a CDF New York Youth Empower Transforming Care Youth Action Researcher. Justin?
Sorry, Missy, it's not my time yet. Let's pass it off to Chanel.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chanel Getty. I'm 17 years old and currently a senior in high school and going on to pursue my dreams of being a forensic anthropologist. It's an honor to share my voice with you guys. The first topic I'm going to talk about is mental health. Mental health is a person's psychological, emotional, and social being. Students suffer from mental health illnesses mainly because of school life and things that go on at home. Students may have broken homes and are too scared to ask for help. There's many stress factors at school that cause students to feel depressed and even suicidal, and some being poor classrooms, unsupportive teachers, and students. It also has a major effect on school performance. It can cause multiple absences, failing grades, unnecessary outbursts, and even dropouts. Mental health isn't taken seriously in school because they are not equipped with the time, resources, or training necessary to give students with signs of mental health illnesses the unique attention they deserve. Have you ever been too tired and not motivated to get up for school? Well, I have, and that is a sign of poor mental health. Students can get help within school by talking to counselors, school officials, and maybe even calling a mental health hotline. Mental health is a real thing, and I think our community should give it more recognition. Youth is not only the future, but we are a big part of today's society. We have the ability to adapt and learn in the environment. We must not lose hope and remember that nothing can stop us from achieving our dreams. Due to high dependence on youth in the society, we, the youth, have a role to play because the future of our families, communities, and country lies in our hands. We are expected to reproduce, advance society, technology, education, and keep peace. We are the backbone. We are the future. We are the youth. I would say that there's a few services provided for young people, but not enough. The community can come up with so many services for young people, some being mental health groups, after-school programs to keep children out of trouble, and maybe even community service. With these services, children will be able to branch out and learn different things. It also connects young people to communities and the challenges they face. We should help the youth succeed and prosper. Thank you all, and it was an honor speaking.
All right, thank you, Chanel. Good evening, everyone. My name is Justin Mercado. I'm a youth action researcher for Children's Defense Fund New York, and I'm here to talk about the necessity of supporting the child welfare housing subsidy. Now, each year, approximately 1,000 youth age out of foster care. Now, as many as 1/3 of youth who age out of foster care experience homelessness, and many more experience unstable housing arrangements. Hence what a few beautiful people mentioned earlier. Families involved with child welfare face housing instability, contributing to stress, increasing the possibility of family separation. Now, as realistically, no parent would want to deal with such strange circumstances that the housing system evokes, especially with children. Now, from my point of view, this was a big part of my own experience with the child welfare and homeless systems throughout New York City, as myself and my family were moved about through the city's housing and shelter systems, what me and my family experienced should not happen to anyone. But naturally, we cannot change the situations out of our control. But it's never too late to change when the opportunity presents itself. Hence, why we're here right now. That's why we have demands for the state budget this year to focus on the child welfare housing subsidy, and our elected officials, like Mr. Andrew Gurnergy, need to listen and heed what we have to say, as this is not a momentary lapse in judgment, but a future preserver, as the youth are the future, right? Let's think. The child welfare housing subsidy is a monthly allotment for families involved in the child welfare system aged 18 to 21, those youth in foster care who are facing housing instability. The subsidy is intended to prevent separation of families who are involved in the child welfare system, expedite family unification, and support the youth who are in foster care. But unfortunately, it's rarely used because the maximum monthly amount of $300, if you believe it, a rate set more than 30 years ago in 1988. We're not in 88 anymore. It's drastically insufficient to stabilize housing. As in living check to check is an understatement. This is the case because New York State's median monthly gross residential rent is $1,390. In New York City, that jumps to $1,579. We know that housing costs have dramatically outpaced wages, and the housing price for young adults and families is real. There's inflation. There's a lot more going on than just the black and white paper. Now, so we're calling on the governor and legislature to enact a state budget that would, one, immediately raise the amount of child welfare housing subsidy to at least $725 a month. Two, index the amount of the subsidy to inflation so we can adhere and rise with the housing costs that continuously go up and be better utilized. Three, raise the age limit for utilizing the subsidy to 24 for those youth leaving the child welfare system so that the youth exiting at 21 may use the subsidy for up to 3 years as it was intended. Now, the children are the future. Our young people and families are too important to let this opportunity go to waste. Let's get this done in the budget this year. There's no time like the present to work on a better tomorrow. Now I'll pass it on to Julia Davis.
Thank you, Justin. My colleague Justin could not have said it more clearly. Our lawmakers in Albany are making decisions about the budget right now. Over the next 2 weeks, everything that we're talking about tonight is either going to be there or not be there. And it makes a big difference about whether our community brings all of its power to these issues tonight. So I urge you to take a moment and support the child welfare housing subsidy bill. That piece is now in the chat tonight. The more our lawmakers hear from you, the more they will move in the direction that we need them to go. And leadership on these issues is coming from young people like Justin, who have lived at the intersection of homelessness and the child welfare system. And this is a critical component of where we need to go next. So thank you so much for taking a moment to support the child welfare housing subsidy. I'm going to take us in a different direction for a few minutes now, thinking about youth justice in New York. The evidence is very clear that raise the age and reforms that many of you have supported for over a decade have been successful. The number of young people involved in crime has decreased over the last 10 years and certainly over the last 5 years while raise the age has been implemented. But this is despite the fact that the state routinely, year after year, does not make the type of financial investment necessary to fund the reform. $800 million have been allocated for raise the age over the last 4 years, but it's been publicly reported that a little over 270 million of those dollars have actually reached communities, meaning community-based providers, young people and their families. And so what we're demanding this year is that the promise of raise the age be met, that what we've allocated each year actually reaches every county throughout New York, and that it's there to support the types of programs we know can actually prevent gun violence and to meet the needs of young people, including mental health, education, restorative justice, and to do that through community-based partners. These types of investments have to be equitable, and that means two things. First, that New York City gets its fair share of that funding. New York City is about half of the number of young people who have contact with the criminal legal system, but has been excluded from Raise the Age dollars from the start, and that's wrong. We also need to make sure that this money goes out into communities and that community-based providers that are the most trusted, most deeply connected to young people can access those funds directly. They don't have to wait for counties to be able to get that money, but they can go to the state and apply for it directly. This is crucial because we know that young people are suffering. We know that the mental health crisis, the stresses around housing, all the things we've heard about tonight contribute to the vulnerability of young people. So we need to see these investments now. I also want to raise one more issue, and that's close to home. Here in New York City, close to home is a juvenile justice reform that was designed to keep young people out of state-run youth prisons, keeping them in their home communities more deeply connected to school and to their families, and to reduce the disconnection that comes from sending young people upstate. It's been successful over a decade. It has had enormous impacts on young people. And what we need to see this year is that this program is reauthorized in the budget, meaning it's approved, sustained permanently, and that New York City gets funding back from the state in order for this to continue. So I'm going to ask you now to take a moment to support these two critical youth justice reforms in the state budget, funding for Raise the Age and support for Close to Home. Both of these projects are about decriminalizing children and about really meeting the obligations for a more racially just New York. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass it back to our Executive Director, Christina Dozier.
Thanks, Julia. We know that our children do not live on an island unto themselves. They are impacted by not just their families' individual circumstances, but also by the conditions of their communities, the circumstances of their neighbors, and by racist, unjust, and inequitable systems. For example, this is why communities experiencing high rates of gun violence are often communities of color in high poverty neighborhoods that are disproportionately impacted by homelessness, childhood lead poisoning, untreated mental illness, contact with the child welfare system, contact with the youth justice system, hunger, poverty wages, etc. CDF's founder, Marian Wright Edelman, said that children do not come in pieces. Tonight, I will add that children do not come in pieces or separate and apart from their communities. To have thriving children, youth, and families requires having thriving communities. To have thriving communities requires holistic funding to meet the full needs of all marginalized children, youth, and young people in their respective communities. Our Whole Child, Whole Community Action Alert is a comprehensive listing of our Whole Child, Whole Community budget ask. Please complete it and encourage your elected officials to pass a Whole Child, Whole Community budget. And now we'll pass it off to my colleague, Carlos.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for everyone joining us tonight. So we're here this week for this week of action. How do we get involved? Well, we get involved by being consistent with our demands, consistent with our asks, to make sure that our youth, our children, our communities, and our families are thriving. Not only are they thriving, that they're able to live a life that is abundantly. And so this week, we ask that you, as we, Children's Defense Fund of New York, continue to defend the joy of growing up, we ask that you join us in the week of action, this call to action every single day. We are engaging with our elected officials, and we're sending very clear signals to let them know that we demand that our people, our young people, our children, our families, our communities across the state have access to the necessary resources, and that this year's budget, the fiscal year 2024 budget and legislative priorities, should reflect those investments and those concerns for everyone across the state. So on Monday, we are going to take action for economic mobility. On Tuesday, we're taking action for housing justice. On Wednesday, we're taking action for youth mental health care. On Thursday, we're taking action to end lead exposure and poisoning in New York State. On Friday, we're taking action for child welfare. On Saturday, we're taking action for youth justice. And on next Sunday, we are taking action for a whole child, whole community, holistic budget. Now, just in case you're wondering how can you continue to be involved, do not do these things once. Don't engage just on the days that are designated, but beyond this week. Continue to contact your elected officials and let them know the importance and that we have our eyes watching all the way to Albany, all the way to Manhattan, all the way to Syracuse, all the way to our borders to make sure that every child, every community, every family is considered and have what they need to thrive, to be successful, and most of all, to grow up with joy. Thank you all so much. I'll pass it back off to our Executive Director, Christina Dozier.
Thank you, Carlos. And so I'll be very brief. Just want to again, thank you for being with us tonight. And I just want to reiterate what Carlos stated. If we act, if we collectively act, then we can actually make change for our young people, for their families, and for their communities. So please do not stand on the sidelines in this moment. Please act, because our children, their families, their communities are in crisis, and they are depending on you and me to do this for them. Our children are worth it. These action alert literally takes less than a few minutes, if that, to do. So please make sure you participate in our week of action, and please let your network know that they need to act as well. Thank you.